The summer sun hung high over the small farming town of Willow Creek, Texas. Heat waves danced above the dusty roads, and most people had already retreated indoors to escape the brutal afternoon temperature. But 68-year-old Martha Johnson was still outside, bent over in her vegetable garden. She carefully picked tomatoes, cucumbers, and peppers from rows she had spent months growing. Sweat dripped down her wrinkled face, soaking her faded work clothes. For years, Martha had raised her granddaughter Emily alone. After Emily's parents died in a tragic car accident, Martha became the only family she had left. Life had never been easy. The old farmhouse they lived in needed repairs. Bills seemed to arrive faster than money. And despite her age, Martha still worked every day to make sure Emily had everything she needed. From the front porch, 12-year-old Emily watched quietly. She loved her grandmother more than anyone in the world. She knew how hard Martha worked. She knew about the sleepless nights. She knew about the sacrifices. What Emily didn't know was that this ordinary summer day was about to become one of the most unforgettable days of their lives. Emily, Martha called from the garden. The young girl jumped to her feet. Yes, Grandma. Can you bring me some cold water? I think this heat is trying to finish me off. Emily laughed. Coming. She hurried inside the farmhouse and headed toward the kitchen. A few minutes later, she emerged carrying a large metal bucket filled with ice-cold water. But instead of walking directly to her grandmother, she suddenly stopped. A mischievous smile appeared on her face. An idea had just entered her mind. The kind of idea that only a 12-year-old could think was absolutely brilliant. Emily looked toward Martha, who was still busy picking vegetables and completely unaware of what was about to happen. The old woman trusted her granddaughter completely, which made Emily's plan even more tempting. Slowly, she began walking across the yard while trying not to laugh. Every step brought her closer. Closer to the garden. Closer to her unsuspecting grandmother. And closer to a moment neither of them would ever forget. Meanwhile, Martha continued working, completely focused on filling her baskets with vegetables. She had no idea that Emily wasn't carrying the water to help her drink it. No. Emily had something very different planned. Something that would leave Martha shocked, speechless, and soaking wet in the middle of the hottest day of the year. As Emily tightened her grip on the bucket, she could barely contain her excitement. Just a few more steps. Just a few more seconds. And everything was about to change. Emily tried her best not to laugh as she carried the heavy bucket across the yard. The cold water sloshed against the metal sides while the hot Texas sun beat down on her back. Her grandmother remained completely focused on her work. Martha carefully placed fresh vegetables into wooden baskets, unaware that her granddaughter was quietly sneaking closer with a plan that seemed hilarious inside her 12-year-old mind. Emily stopped several feet behind her. For a moment, she hesitated. Maybe she shouldn't do it. Maybe Grandma would get angry. But then she remembered how exhausted Martha had looked only minutes earlier. The poor woman was drenched in sweat. Her face was red from the heat. Even her hands trembled slightly from working under the blazing sun for hours. A smile returned to Emily's face. This might actually help her cool down, she whispered to herself. Without making a sound, she moved even closer. Now she was only a few feet away. Martha still hadn't noticed. The older woman was humming softly while picking tomatoes from a vine. Everything seemed peaceful. Normal. Quiet. Then Emily lifted the bucket. At that exact moment, Martha turned her head slightly. "Did you bring my water, sweetheart?" she asked. Emily grinned. "Oh, I brought it." Before Martha could say another word, Emily tipped the bucket forward. A huge wave of ice-cold water exploded through the air. For a split second, time seemed to stop. Martha's eyes widened. Her mouth dropped open. The bucket emptied completely. Water crashed over her head, soaked her clothes, splashed across the vegetables, and drenched everything around her. The shocked grandmother jumped backward with a loud scream. The basket beside her tipped over. Tomatoes rolled across the ground. Cucumbers scattered through the dirt. For 2 full seconds, absolute silence filled the garden. Emily froze. The smile disappeared from her face. Suddenly, she wasn't sure if this had been a good idea after all. Water dripped from Martha's hair. Dripped from her clothes. Dripped from the tip of her nose. The older woman slowly stood up and stared directly at her granddaughter. Neither of them said a word. Emily's heart started pounding. Had she gone too far? Was Grandma angry? The expression on Martha's face was impossible to read. Then something unexpected happened. Something Emily never saw coming. Martha took 1 step forward, looked down at the empty bucket, and slowly began reaching for something lying beside the garden. And the moment Emily realized what it was, her eyes grew twice as wide. Because suddenly, she wasn't the only one planning a surprise. Emily's heart nearly stopped. Her grandmother was reaching for the old garden hose lying beside the vegetable beds. "No, Grandma," Emily said nervously while taking a small step backward. Martha slowly picked up the hose and looked at her granddaughter with a serious expression. Water dripped from her clothes. Her apron was soaked. Even her shoes squished against the muddy ground. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. The hot summer wind moved through the garden. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. Emily swallowed hard. She was no longer laughing. "Grandma, I'm sorry," she said quietly. Martha narrowed her eyes. "Oh, you're sorry now?" Emily nodded quickly. "I thought it would help cool you down." Martha looked down at herself. Then she looked at the overturned basket of vegetables. Then back at Emily. The serious expression remained on her face. And that terrified Emily even more. For years, Martha had been the kindest person Emily knew. She almost never got angry, which made moments like this feel much worse. Emily slowly backed away. "Grandma." Another step. "Grandma, you're not mad, right?" Another step. Martha suddenly smiled. A very suspicious smile. The kind of smile that made Emily realize she was in trouble. Big trouble. Before Emily could react, Martha turned the water valve. A powerful stream of water burst from the hose. "Run!" Emily shouted. She spun around and sprinted across the yard as fast as she could. Martha laughed and chased after her. For a 68-year-old woman, she moved surprisingly fast. The garden instantly turned into a battlefield. Emily ran around vegetable baskets. Martha sprayed water everywhere. The porch. The fence. The flowers. Nothing was safe. Emily's laughter echoed across the property. For the first time in months, Martha was laughing just as hard. Neither of them noticed a pickup truck slowing down on the road nearby. Inside the truck sat a man wearing a business suit. He had been driving through town for work when something unusual caught his attention. He looked toward the farmhouse, then toward the garden, then toward Martha and Emily. The man smiled. Most people saw an old farm. He saw something completely different. Something valuable. Something that could change Martha and Emily's lives forever. A few minutes later, he parked his truck near the gate and stepped out. Neither Martha nor Emily knew it yet. But the stranger walking toward their property was carrying news that would shock the entire town. And by sunset, nothing would ever be the same again. Martha and Emily finally stopped running when they noticed a stranger standing near the front gate. The man looked completely out of place. He wore an expensive navy blue suit, polished shoes, and a silver watch that probably cost more than Martha's old pickup truck. For a moment, nobody said anything. The stranger smiled politely. "Sorry to interrupt," he said. "I couldn't help noticing all the laughter." Emily and Martha exchanged confused looks. Most visitors never stopped at their farmhouse. Especially not people who looked like they belonged in skyscrapers instead of vegetable gardens. "My name is Richard Collins," the men continued. "I'm from Dallas." Martha wiped water from her face. "Can we help you with something?" Richard glanced around the property. The old farmhouse. The garden. The baskets filled with fresh vegetables. Then his eyes settled on Martha. "I think I might be able to help you." That immediately caught their attention. Richard explained that he owned a company that supplied fresh produce to several restaurant chains across Texas. Earlier that morning, he had visited nearby farms looking for reliable local suppliers. Most had disappointed him. The vegetables were average. The quality was inconsistent. But when he drove past Martha's property, he noticed something different. The vegetables in her garden looked healthier than anything he had seen all day. "Would you mind if I took a closer look?" he asked. Martha nodded. For the next 20 minutes, Richard carefully inspected the crops. He asked dozens of questions. How long had she been farming? What fertilizer did she use? How did she protect the plants during droughts? The more he learned, the more impressed he became. Finally, he stood up and smiled. A big smile. The kind of smile that usually meant something important. "Mrs. Johnson," he said, "I want to buy everything you grow." Martha blinked. "What?" "Not just today," Richard replied. "Every season." Emily's jaw dropped. Martha looked stunned. For years she had struggled to sell enough vegetables to survive. Now a major company wanted all of them. It sounded impossible. But Richard wasn't finished. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a document. The number printed on the first page made Martha's hands tremble. It was more money than she normally earned in several years. Emily stared at the paper. Then at her grandmother. Then back at Richard. Neither of them could believe what they were seeing. But before Martha could answer, Richard said something that shocked them even more. "This is only the beginning." And suddenly, the future they had always dreamed about seemed closer than ever before. For several moments, Martha simply stared at the contract in her hands. Her fingers trembled. Her eyes filled with tears. The amount written on the page seemed unreal. 4 years. She had worried about bills, repairs, and whether she would have enough money to give Emily a better future. Now, one signature could change everything. Emily looked up at her grandmother. "Grandma, is this real?" Martha couldn't answer immediately. She was too emotional. Richard smiled. "It's very real." He explained that several restaurant chains were searching for high-quality local produce. And Martha's vegetables were among the best he had seen in years. The deal would guarantee steady income for seasons to come. No more wondering how bills would be paid. No more choosing between repairs and groceries. No more struggling alone. Finally, Martha signed the agreement. The moment her pen left the paper, Emily threw her arms around her grandmother. Both of them were crying now. Not from sadness. From relief. From gratitude. From knowing that years of hard work had finally been recognized. A few weeks later, workers arrived at the farmhouse. The leaking roof was repaired. The broken fence was replaced. The old truck was fixed. For the first time in years, the future looked bright. But the biggest change wasn't the money. It was what Martha learned that day. Success doesn't always arrive when you expect it. Sometimes it comes after years of sacrifice. Years of patience. Years of refusing to give up. One evening, as the sun set over the garden, Emily sat beside her grandmother on the porch. "Remember when I dumped that bucket of water on you?" Emily asked with a grin. Martha laughed loudly. "I don't think I'll ever forget it." They both smiled as they looked across the garden that had changed their lives. The same garden that once seemed ordinary had become the reason their future was secure. And deep inside, Martha knew something important. The stranger may have brought the opportunity. But it was years of hard work, love, and determination that made the miracle possible. Sometimes the greatest blessings arrive when you least expect them. And sometimes they begin with nothing more than a bucket of water on a hot summer day.